Hi everyone, my name is Miguel, and I live in the poorest city in Mexico, Chimalhuacan. In case you haven't heard, our town is known for its poverty, filth, and the amount of theft. It's not because people are so mean, it's just that life has forced us to live that way. I also, like my family, neighbours and relatives, used to steal. But what to do? We have such unemployment and everyone wants to eat. But then one day my father was offered a part-time job in another city, which was very far away. It took 2 days to get there on foot, but my father took the risk because they promised a good wage. All in all, Dad was gone for 3 weeks. We were worried, but there was nowhere to call. What kind of communication are we talking about when we don't always even have enough money for food? So during this time, we got by with what we could. My mother here and there trying to earn money. Tourists we do not have, and if they come, then more often than not they are accompanied by a dozen guards. Closer to the night, we heard that someone came into the house. We were frightened. We thought the neighbours had come to steal again, and we were almost right. My mother ran outside and saw my father lying on the doorstep, badly beaten and bleeding. It turned out that the locals had somehow found out that Dad had gone to earn money. They had been waiting for him the whole time, and when he came into town, they attacked him and took everything that he had earned from his physical labour at the construction site. That was the first time I saw my father cry. We knew it was our neighbours, but we couldn't prove anything. It's like a jungle here, survival of the fittest. I was very upset and realised that I was tired of living like this. The very next day, I went to see the most respected old man in town. He was just over 123 years old. Everyone listened to him and respected him, and he was the only one who wasn't being ripped off. Although he was the poorest of them all, I went to talk to him, told him the situation, and suggested new rules for survival. The old man listened attentively and then said it was the brightest idea of the last 10 years. The same day, he held a general meeting and said that now we would live differently. Every Saturday, there would be a so-called open table in town. A huge table would be set up on the main street and everyone would bring something to eat and drink. That way, everyone who is hungry will be fed, and everyone full will share a meal with a friend and get it back. People reacted differently, but in the end, they decided to support the elders' decision. I was pleased with myself. That's a neat idea. I think so. It's a good way to eat. Maybe our neighbours will become nicer and won't steal from each other so brazenly. We used to live much friendlier. Everything changed 10 years ago. For some reason, people became aggressive and there was less work. And then it got worse and worse. And how was it before? There was more work, more money, and no one went hungry. And then suddenly everything was divided. Some die of hunger and some live too well. There are a few of them, but they are there. And everyone is afraid to rob them because it turns out badly afterwards. I hope the new system helps. And it did work. On the first Saturday, people laid the table. It was not luxurious, but not meagre either. Everyone was able to eat. The elderly and the children were full and happy. Someone started to sing. We had a dance, played and had fun. We haven't had such a holiday for a long time. Everyone liked the new rule and we got a little better. The old man praised me as he watched the town come to life little by little. After a month, we realised that we could not only eat together, but also help. Someone's house broke down and we ran to fix it. Someone got sick, we shared tips on how to treat it and brought what we had in the first aid kit. If someone's children were left unattended, others helped to watch. In general, we got something we hadn't had for a long time. Hope. Hope for a better life, for good deeds. In another month, the city was transformed. Together we cleaned it up, we removed all the garbage from the streets, washed and cleaned it, even cleaned ourselves. Isn't that cool? And then a guest came to visit us. It was a businessman. He was a foreigner. He had visited us before, but not as often as lately. He talked mostly with people who lived more or less well. Sometimes he stopped by the elder's house. This time he looked at the town with wonder. Then he quickened his pace and ran to the elder. Then he left. No one knows what they talked about, but 2 days later, we found out that our elder died. It came as a shock to everyone. What do we do now? Who do we listen to? How are we going to live without him? Panic ensued. I decided to take the initiative. I stood up in the middle of the table on a Saturday night when everyone was in attendance and said, "Don't give in to the panic. That would be living our lives as before, and better if we wanted to." We had the same exact meal, buried Grandpa, and prayed. And then we noticed something strange falling from the sky. "Money? Money? It's money!" people shouted. Everyone forgot about the table and our conversations. Everyone was filling their pockets. People have awakened again to the primal nature from which we have been diligently ridding ourselves for months. I looked at the city and cried. It hurt. When we got home, Dad looked at me and I looked at him. "You didn't take the money. Why?" "My son is teaching me a different life. Why should I oppose or resemble the herd? I am proud of my son." I was deeply moved by this. I hugged my father, and then he asked me if I noticed anything strange. "What do you mean?" "Every time that businessman comes to town, we get in trouble." "Do you think it has something to do with that?" "Our elder lived for many years. He was healthy and passed away supposedly from a heart attack. I know for a fact that his heart was healthy before that businessman showed up." "That's right. He's been coming to us a lot lately. And the money?" "Maybe it was his doing. But for what? We can find out." My father offered to help and I agreed. Another time when the businessman came again, we followed him and overheard a conversation with the neighbors he was chatting with. "Well done, well done." "Thank you, sir. We'll do more if you like." "You're welcome. Chaos is good for me. The more the better. Don't worry about money. I'll pay you generously." He went out and left, and my father and I immediately dragged our neighbor out of the house and started prying into what was going on. He resisted for a long time. Then I had to push a little harder. Tell him if he wouldn't confess, we'd tell him he was to blame for the elder's death. He started talking right away. "Oh no, they'll hate me right away." "Then speak. What's going on?" He just pays me to report the situation, that's all." "Why would he do that?" "I don't know, but he obviously doesn't like us living peacefully together. It helps him that we are fighting and robbing each other." "Now that's interesting." We left the neighborhood, then we noticed the bodyguards of the businessman going to the house of the dead elder. They had a fence around the house, so we managed to get in. When they left, we found weapons inside, a whole cache of guns. "I see why the chaos. Nobody will come here to check, and even if they do, they will say it's a local weapon and they will arrest us." And we only add oil to the fire with our attitude to each other, theft and aggression. "He must have made the money from the sky. We have to do something." And we did. It was not easy. Many people didn't believe us. We spent a long time explaining and arguing. And then it was Saturday. I just convinced everybody to behave a little differently and see what the reaction was. We set the table, ate, then noticed a helicopter in the sky. It was dropping bags of money. The money just kept pouring down like rain, but the residents were not seen to collect it. We waited until everything had fallen, then gathered everything into one pile. We counted it up and divided it equally. The whole time the helicopter was hovering in the sky, and we pretended not to notice. You should have seen the look on the businessman's face, how mad he was. He came down and started shouting, "Where was our excitement, our desire for a better life?" He was scared. He was losing. All we did was keep quiet and look at him. Then I came out and said he couldn't manipulate us, not anymore. He got really pissed off, and we removed the cloth that was hiding the pile of guns. And we said that we had already written a letter to the authorities, and very soon journalists and representatives of the law would come. "You will be sorry. I gave you a chance for a good life, but you turned it down. Don't regret it later." Suddenly Maria, one of the youngest girls in town, ran out, kicked him between the legs, and ran away. The bodyguards dragged him off, almost lying down. From then on, my father and I took the place of our ringleader. We had a new lease on life. We used the money dropped from the sky to open a mini factory in town. It gave jobs and attracted investors. We opened a school and a kindergarten. We became friendlier and kinder. And what else do you need in order to live happily? Tell me, guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it.
Hi, my name is Reggie. Want to hear a story about how to make money? Well, then look here. Guys, do not forget to put likes, subscribe to the channel, and comment on my story. To begin with, please tell me, at what age did you first start earning money? How much and where? My beginning of the story is a bit sad, but that's what prompted me to pull myself together and start acting, so listen up. I was born into a full family. I have a mother and 3 sisters, and my father was there until he went out the door for bread. We haven't seen him since. Well, about everything by the Strand. As you have already understood, we are a large family. I am the oldest child in the family. My parents wanted to give birth to a girl for complete happiness. My mother could not get pregnant for a long time. The dream of a girl haunted me. My mother cried at night. I heard her praying that heaven would send her another child. Her age was no longer young, and yet she got pregnant. It was a great holiday for us. My father came home early from work when my mother told him the news. I was about 15 years old at the time. Everything was great, and then suddenly changed. When my mother went for the first ultrasound, what they were told shocked both of them. "You have triplets," the doctor said. My father could not believe it. My mother was crying, but these were tears of happiness. And when she gave birth, I remember running around the hospital looking for food for my mother. I couldn't wait to see my little sisters. The status of an older brother attracted me, and so 3 beautiful girls were born: Eileen, Leah, and Mia. They were a copy of their father. At first, Dad was beside himself with happiness, but after a week, he realized how hard children are given. In addition to the fact that he began to shirk from helping my mother, he also quietly dumped all the responsibilities of the house on me. I even learned how to cook, clean, wash, and iron. It was terribly hard for me. I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't have time to do any homework. My mother saw it. She was grateful, but it was still harder for her. And then it turned out that it was hard for my father. He could not stand it, and his words about the girls being the biggest reward disappeared somewhere. My father went out to get some bread and didn't come back. We realized this almost immediately when we looked at the table. There were 3 bags of bread. My mother was upset, and then desperate. I couldn't watch her suffer, so I started helping her with the girls. Sometimes he could even put them to sleep so that Mom could get some sleep. Did I think I'd quit too? Because that's not what real men do. In the end, the money began to run out, and my mother was even more panicked. We were wondering how we should live, and I promised my mother that I would take care of her. After school, I also began to work as a waiter. In the summer, I washed cars, walked dogs, cleaned swimming pools and gardens at neighbors. In winter, I cleaned snow. In autumn and spring, yards from debris and leaves. I didn't get paid to say that a lot, but with a good economy, we have enough for bills, food, and diapers. My mother thanked me every day for everything, but how could I not? To be honest, the first couple of months were still normal, but then it became very difficult. I remember that I started exams at school, and because of frequent absences, I still had to take individual subjects. There was a complete blockage at school, and a lot of problems at work. I accidentally broke 23 plates in a cafe, spilled hot coffee on a visitor, and gave the wrong change. I was deprived of my salary for a whole week. I came home and found out that the girls were sick. I didn't have the money to buy medicine. I didn't even know how to get out of it now, because it was the end. My mother came to me all tearful. She felt sorry for me, but I wanted to stay strong in her eyes. I kissed her and went outside. I didn't know where to go or what to do, and I didn't want anything. I was desperate like my mom. When I crossed the road, I didn't pay attention to the traffic light. I was hit by a car. Oh no, not much. I got off with a couple of bruises because the speed was slow. The woman who came out of there in a panic began to walk around me. It turned out to be the owner of the institution where I worked. I met her at the hospital. Mrs. Viggins was very nice, unlike our receptionist. She called my mother and promised to bring me home, reassured her, explaining that nothing terrible had happened to me. My mother wanted to come, but with 3 children in her arms, it was difficult, so I asked her to stay at home. I told Mrs. Viggins about our situation, and she was impressed and even cried. I have long wanted to fire the administrator. I heard rumors that he steals the cash register, and also steals broken dishes on young waiters like you, and then in this way launders money for supposedly new plates, she said. It was only at that moment that I suddenly realized that I hadn't seen how many plates I had broken or whether it was me, because I was carrying an order when I heard the clatter of dishes behind me. Mrs. Viggins brought me home, left a tidy sum for my recovery and for the girls, and the very next day I came to work for the proceedings. She was right. It turns out that while no one was watching, she set up a camera where you can see how I turn away to carry the order, and at this moment the administrator pulls out a tray with shards and pushes it to the floor, and then pretends that it was me. He asked not to go to the police and return all the loot, but the owner did not forgive him and still called the police. She appointed me to take his place, and promised me a promotion. I agreed to start work in a week to close the tales of my studies. Over time, everything improved. My mother couldn't express her gratitude, and I knew how embarrassed she was, but I did it from the heart, and I knew I was doing it right. In the end, I passed all the exams, not perfectly, but it will go. And then I came to the cafe. Mrs. Viggins was waiting for me, and I was glad of it. Almost immediately, I started a new position, began to receive even more money. So a few years passed, the girls grew up, and my mother was looking for a nanny to go to work herself. I was supposed to be going to college by then, and Mrs. Viggins offered me a great option. She promised to pay for half of my studies if I stayed to help her with her business. She had no children and no family, and she liked me, so I gladly agreed. Undoubtedly, everyone has hard times. But the main thing to remember is that all the best is always waiting ahead. What do you guys think?